Good morning. Welcome to today's episode of The VUU. And today I am very excited and happy that we will be having members of the Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism collective. So before we get started with our very, very special guests, I would like to, I'm Aisha Hauser. Let me start with that. And I'm in Seattle. Let's go with our regulars to introduce themselves. Meg.
Hey, Meg Riley. Today I'm in Boston, Massachusetts at the UUA headquarters for the CLF board meeting that starts tonight.
Good morning, everyone. This is Mykal TIno joining you from my house in Peekskill, New York. Good to see you all.
And Jessica.
I'm Jessica and I'm doing tech today.
Jessica is also here on the West Coast with me. So we have today Lena K. Gardner, the Executive Director of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, Didi Delgado, Black Lives of UU Collaborative Organizer, and the Reverend Mykal Slack, BLUU's Community Minister for Worship and Spiritual Care. I am so excited to have all of you with us today. And I want to start with Puerto Rico. It is so incredibly heartbreaking, and one of the things I wanted that you all to talk about is, I understand you all, BLUU just sent out a statement, a pastoral statement along with links of how we can help. And one of the most inspiring things that happened with Houston that I saw was folks giving to people directly, giving to Black women directly, and not to entities like the Red Cross or other nonprofits. So Lena, can you speak to that, or any of you, can you speak to that? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Also, thanks for having us. So, I mean, we felt really moved to reflect on both, because it's not just Puerto Rico, right? It's the earthquake in Mexico, it's the islands in the Caribbean, it's so many places, but it's really an intersection where we very clearly see amplified effects of systemic and structural injustice. And we also see the consequences of having framed ecological disaster absent a race and class analysis and what happens. So, we felt that. We also felt, I think, there can be sort of this creeping sense of like hopelessness and sort of a, well, that's really sad, but I'm just me. I'm just trying to pay my rent. And so I'm going to, have some feelings about it and then just keep on going. And so we kind of wanted to offer up, I think, some processes that, we've sort of discovered or have used around how do we sort of interrogate our own relationship to power, to thinking about ecological disasters with a race and class lens. And then also, how do we move through that into action, which for us, I think, is always how we best live out our faith values. And so, the statement that we put up on Medium really reflects sort of our thinking on that. And then at the end, we talk about how to do giving differently. For us, it's really clear that in organizations, when I was looking at what was happening in Puerto Rico and Mexico, a lot of the mainstream media were pointing to these giant international aid organizations like Oxfam, UNICEF, and the Red Cross. But we know when you talk to people on the ground there that they oftentimes fall very short of helping folks, particularly Black and Brown folks. So it's, again, an area where we see inequalities reproducing themselves with a particular sting of anti-Blackness. And this is people's lives we're talking about. So, we highlight ways to give that are giving directly to people who need the money. So that in Houston, for instance, that was Black women directly displaced by the flood needing support and giving directly to their PayPal links. The article from Remezcla that we posted has a lot of other direct giving in Puerto Rico. And then, we tried to do the same thing with Mexico. And I actually invited folks also, if they knew other people or had friends and family directly affected, to post their links in the comments so that we can really be cutting out that middle, administrative person and or entity and organization, and really giving to people who need it. And I think when you challenge, in the past, when I've challenged people to do this, one of the things that you find is how deeply conditioned we are to mistrust Black and brown folks in particular, and how deeply conditioned we are to put all of our faith and trust into these large, organizations. Also, how conditioned folks are to, demand that their charity giving have be charitable, right? And they get the tax write-off. And it's really about, for us, shifting sort of, those narratives in people's minds and hearts, and really asking people to think about how those are all symptoms of a white supremacist system, and what that does to keep us isolated, to keep us disconnected, and frankly, it costs people their lives in these disasters. We're seeing that in Puerto Rico right now. Millions of people are like in imminent danger because of white supremacy and white supremacist systems of thinking and being in the world. And so we really want to challenge people that there is something they can do, even though they can't fly a plane to Puerto Rico or give millions of dollars. There is something that they can do in their own minds and hearts to be combating that white supremacy, for sure.
Didi and Mykal want to chime in on this?
Yeah, thanks for that, Aisha, and thank you, Lena, for sharing all of that. This statement, it was deeply meaningful. In particular, to me, we have relatives in Puerto Rico right now who we've not been in touch with, and my spouse's aunt probably isn't getting her dialysis right now, right? Because of everything that's happening, and it's really important that we're clear that this is just as important as anything else that's going on right here in these United States that we often tend to think of first, right? It's just as important. It's just as important that we give. It's just important that we're checking in on people, right? There are a lot of folks who are really struggling right now because they can't get to their folks and because they feel helpless. And so it really matters that we're checking in on people, and holding space for people. Even in the places that we might not ordinarily think to do that. And I think it really mattered that statement at the end about how this connects to our faith as Unitarian Universalists is really important and necessary. Like, we're not just doing this because, we want to say that we were able to give something. We need to do it because people's lives are at stake.
Didi?
Yeah, thank you both for that. I think that the framing that BLUU released is super important because there was an Audre Lorde quote that was used that we're not a single issue movement. And I'm not exactly certain why a lot of people stop at, well, I've already given. Things are going to continuously happen. And it's complex, just like everyone. Thank you, Lena and Mykal. It's very complex because these are Black and brown bodies, and like the media is not covering this. And so like if you see on your timeline, everyone's like, what can we do? What can we do? And I think that the article on Medium is super helpful. And I saw that Jess is going to tweet it out on the CLF Facebook and Twitter. I think that's super important to release that information. It lists you caring links. And I also want to uplift that there are several folks on the ground who, like Mykal was saying, that our families are interconnected, right? And I just came from Cuomo 6 months ago. And we want to make sure that we're, as well as national efforts, that we're also uplifting folks in our own communities, right? Who are like destitute and wanting to check in on their families and like can't even get through to the phone, like Mykal was saying, to see if their families are okay. So I know that here in Boston and many other cities, folks are doing local drives and even supporting the marginalized folks who people think aren't respectable. I know that there's a woman who is a healer, and she's doing all the collections here in Boston, and people are supporting her, and that's empowering folks here to empower their folks there. So, yeah.
One of the things that's irked me about the coverage is we're so conditioned to follow the shiny object who makes so, everyone's worried about what the president's saying or not saying and not doing. Imagine if the narrative was, to shift it to the Black and brown people in Puerto Rico who are just fighting for their lives. And so, yeah. So thank you for putting that out there. And we have alternative sources for information, and one of them is BLUU. So one of your founding members was on the Daily Show yesterday. So does anyone, Lena, who's laughing, tell us about that.
Yes. Well, Leslie Mack, she was founded Safety Pin Box along with Marissa Johnson, and they were on the Daily Show, which it's a fascinating look at this idea of starting a business to meet a market need, right? There are a lot of people in this work who have been asking, what can we do as white folks in particular? Excuse me. And they came up with a market solution like this. We have a series of educational things we can provide, and we want to be compensated for our work. And then they just went about and did it. And it's been pretty successful. I think the one hallmark standout thing that they have done that is drastically different than any other business model I have ever seen is their Black women being component, which is where they designate a portion of the proceeds to Black women. And there aren't any hoops you have to jump through. There's no like credibility test that you have to pass. You don't have to talk, at length about, you don't have to submit a 10-page grant proposal. It's literally just like, this is me, this is who I am, and that's it. And I forget what the amount was. Maybe Didi or Mykal or somebody else knows, but they have given a significant amount away to
I think
Black
they said
women.
60,000.
Yeah, 60,000.
January.
60,000.
That's what they said on the Daily Show, but it's way more than that now. It's amazing what they're giving away.
Right. Because that show was, when it was taped, it was a while back. So I know that, and I know organizers here in Minneapolis who have been recipients of that money, and it's been really profoundly impactful. And so, I don't have anything but praises for their business model, which I think is in and of itself a challenge to white supremacy and doing the work of dismantling it in action, in praxis, in real life. And so I just think, one, the piece was amazing. And also the content, I've, been able to see just a few pieces of it, mostly because I have gone a couple times to help them stuff the boxes. But it's incredibly intelligent. It's incredibly just solid content for people. So that those are my reflections on it. And the piece was just really hilarious. So I don't know if we can find a link to share with people, but it was just really funny. So.
And the thing that strikes me about the responses to it is that, as if they're supposed to spend their time really worrying about what white people do is just ridiculous to me. There's something about it that even the responses in their own way are hilarious, but also sad. It's like, this is your work. And so you're either going to do your work or you're not going to. And they're uplifting Black women in the process, which is the point.
Yeah, I'm a donor to Black Women Being, or a subscriber, or whatever you are with that, and it feels great. It just feels like such a wonderful, life-giving thing that they're doing. So much life, and such a brilliant business model. I mean, as he said, Blue Apron for anti-racism. I mean, that just so brilliant. And I know, Lena, that was invented when you were on vacation with them, right? You were.
Yes.
Just love that after the election.
We were all on vacation in Jamaica, and it literally started from a poolside discussion, because if you remember at that time, Trump had just been elected, and there was all of these white people talking about, we're going to wear safety pins and we're going to show how much of an ally we are. And literally every Black person that I know was like, I see that safety pin, I'm running the other direction. Like, that's, so it's literally how the discussion started.
And I just want to reference what Mykal was saying, because one of the at the end, when in the segment, if those of you who are watching or listening haven't seen it yet, Ron Wood says to Roy Wood, it's terrible, I don't know. Anyway, the Daily Show correspondent asked Marissa and Leslie, he said, "Oh, this is working," and they said, "Well, that's not our goal. Our goal is to help Black women." And so Marissa said, "You know, whether or not this works is between you and your white Jesus," which I thought was the friggin' best line of the whole thing. But white people, in reaction to that, sent really angry emails to Safety Pin Box. And what I found interesting about that is they're simply being honest about their business model, which I tell people, subscribe to Safety Pin Box, because they're helping Black women. Black women founded it, and they're helping Black women. So the part of the our conditioning in this country is we have to be sold things and sold the lie that people want to help us, that we want to be helped. And really it's about making money. And this is making money for good. And to me, I was fascinated that people want the Oprah lie. I want to improve your life. And meanwhile, Oprah has more money than God. I don't think she gives a care about improving people's lives. Anyway, so BLUU, let's go on to Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism. And I'm going to talk less now, because I want to hear from the three of you about, it would be to speak to the importance, crucial spiritual importance of Black only space, and your ministry that is so life-saving, life-giving, and revolutionary.
Yeah, I think I'll invite Reverend Mykal Slack to reflect on that first, since I feel like I've gone first these other times.
Yes. My goodness. I believe since June, officially, I've been the community minister for worship and spiritual care, but have been as staff, but it was on the organizing collective prior to that since March. And I just have to say, there's something really magical, something really special that we're all trying to hold with so much care, which is this deep desire and need for Black folks to be able to show up fully as themselves in UU spaces, and to feel valued in those spaces, and this is what we endeavor to offer to folks, for ourselves and for the folks and for all the folks who are Black UUs in the movement. And so we do that in a bunch of different ways, right? Obviously in person when we're together at spaces like GA. I know for 2 years in a row, right? This past year was the second year that we held a explicitly Black healing space. And just to see folks come into this space and take some deep breaths and put their shoulders down, right? And know that whoever they are in that space, they're going to be loved and valued and cared for, and receive whatever healing they may need in that moment is a rare space to find, right? And so those are the kinds of spaces that we endeavor to create. Much of my work as community minister, a lot of that work is virtual, honestly, which is a really unique and interesting way to do ministry. But it's really incredible and just as meaningful, right? It just looks and feels a little bit different. We started to offer monthly BLUU worship spaces online, which happens the third Sunday of every month at 9 p.m., which is really excellent.
Are exclusively Black.
Which are exclusively Black spaces.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Yeah, say it again for the people in the back. It is an exclusively Black space. And that's really intentional. There's gosh, I can't even tell you what it felt like to have the first one in September, and to see all these, just a sea of Black faces in the Zoom room, and people were just smiling at each other and didn't quite know what to do with the fact that we were all there together, just being.
And can I just give a special shout out here to CLF, because there are a lot actually of Black folks that are part of BLUU community that are also members at CLF and have a familiarity and just, you know, special place in their heart for online worship in particular. And you could really see that, I think, show up in our offering of people, you know, being able to, you know, write hugs in the chat box, and, you know, really creating a space that does take, you know, it isn't the same as in real life worship, and it is still really meaningful. And so I think that having had people who have that experience in CLF worship just really made a difference in people's ability to connect. And then for it to be an exclusively Black space, you could just, so many people needed that. And it was really, I even, you know, kind of, I mean, I was in tears. Both me and Mykal shared, like, turning off our screens because we were crying, because in part it is what we envisioned when we launched Black Lives of UU just over 2 years ago now. You know, we really thought, like, we really knew that we needed this space, and we really wanted to create it, and it took some time and a lot of work, but then here it is 2 years later. And we had at one point, I think, just over 40 folks in the worship, which is pretty sizable for our first one. And so we were just really blown away. So I just had to interject that, Mykal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, at one point there were, I think, 46 or 47 people in that room, and it just blew me away. I was blown away by it for days and days. And I know if I was blown away by it and really felt that for that long, other people were feeling it too, right? And could carry it into all the other spaces where we have to go and experience all the mess, right, that we have to experience out in the world. Like, we get to carry that with us and remember the music that was really beautiful and dope, right? And remember the words that were spoken, and just remember the ability to be in community in a new way. It was really special. So we're able to do that, and we're doing that once a month now. We have been and will continue to be offering pastoral care a couple of times each week for folks who need it. And, you know, I'll just say briefly about that. It's actually a quote from somebody who I spoke with not too long ago, who said, you know, I could go to my UU congregation, but the minister there doesn't get me or my life, and doesn't understand how my family works and what makes sense to me. And so being able to sit here and talk to another Black person who's a minister is something super special. And I think that's just what's real, right? Like, folks really needing to feel like the spiritual care is care that will meet their specific needs as Black UUs. And
Mykal,
so we're able to do that.
how do you offer the pastoral care? I'm interested in platforms. I mean, by what means do you do that? Is it one-to-one, or is it
It's one-to-one? It's one-to-one right now. And we have, go ahead, Lena.
It's also on our website. I will provide a link to share with folks.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. But yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry, no, I just wanted to make sure that folks knew that we will be releasing the information via email and on our Facebook page. We'll create an event well in advance of the next one, but as Reverend Mykal said, it'll be the third Sunday of each month. And what we'll do is release the Zoom information, and we definitely invite Black UUs to join in and share the link with other Black folks who need that sort of support.
That's right. Thank you, Didi. So we're going to continue to do that, and other kinds of things that we're doing are facilitating meetups, which, you know, this is all about connection, right? And how
Are you going to cover the pastoral care line and BLUU daily affirmations?
I can say the number for the line. The number for the pastoral care line is 984 219-8711. And so basically what folks do is they call in and schedule, they leave a message saying that they'd like to receive some pastoral care, and then we schedule it during the week.
And how do you feel about ministers, say, who talk to somebody and think, boy, I really didn't meet their needs particularly well, saying, you know, there's also this pastoral care line for Black UUs? Is that something you encourage ministers in other churches to share?
I mean, I think so. Absolutely. Right. Like, this is, as many ways as we can share that information with Black UUs, we want to do that. So if somebody's listening right now and know that there's somebody who needs some sort of spiritual care that they are not getting and have been able to articulate that they're not able to get in their congregation, to please share that information with them. Thank you for that, Meg. So yeah, it's just a really beautiful opportunity for folks to connect in some new ways, and we're in the process of just hearing from people. You know, we send out a note to folks after the fact to say, let us know how that went for you, and if there are things that we can do better, let us know that. If there are things in particular that you really appreciated about that moment, let us know that too. So we're trying to do some assessment along the way as well to make sure that folks are really getting what they need.
Which is a great segue into inviting Didi to talk about the BLUU assessment for Black UUs.
Yes, I love the BLUU assessment. So I have some folks laughing at the office. Okay, so the BLUU survey that Reverend Mykal and I curated, we worked on it over the course of the month that we were in New Orleans, and we launched it in mid-September. And we're inviting Black Unitarian Universalists to fill out this information. It definitely touches on pastoral care and what the needs are, experienced it. It also touches on political education and wanting to know where Black Unitarian Universalists are at, and what they know, what they want to know, what needs to be covered, how can we help support them go out and organize, not just in movement spaces, but also in their local communities. And just, you know, getting the feel on building relationships based on that information. So I definitely want to invite you to take the survey. We have it posted on our Facebook page, and
Lena? We're inviting you, if you are a Black Unitarian Universalist, to take the survey.
I want to be clear. We've been answering some emails, like in the introduction, and even on the Facebook page, we're inviting Black UUs, and then we'll get a white Unitarian Universalist who's like, I see that this says you're inviting Black UUs. Should I fill this out as well? And I'm not sure sometimes how to answer it, because I want to say no and then just be done with it, but also like honoring that the earnestness for everyone to fill it out. It's not necessary. We're just looking for feedback and input from Black Unitarian Universalists, because that's who we are in direct service to. So thanks, Lena.
Yeah, and I think for me, this speaks to, I've actually been told by a number of white UUs how BLUU is ministering to them as well, in different ways. And I think I just find it really fascinating that we are a Black-centered, Black-focused, group of folks, and we are trying to do ministry in a way that is Black-centered and Black-focused, and is also feeding other folks. And I think that there's just a lot of fertile ground there, I think, for white youth to learn from how we're doing this, why we're doing it the ways we are, and how so many different people of a lot of different cultural backgrounds are telling us that they are getting fed from it as well. And I think about just the importance of that, and it's and something I reflect on. But yeah, certainly the assessment. And I want to give a shout out here to Caitlin Breedlove, who really taught me about the importance of really tapping into like what your community that you're serving, like what are their needs, what do they want, and that being really careful not to make assumptions about that. And I think that's a big difference I've seen in the work that we as BLUU are doing, is really trying to get really close to our folks and really saying, what are your needs? And then, thinking how we can strategically and do that best, and not in a way that's like transactional and like service oriented. I think that's also, or like capitalist is service oriented, right? Like, I think there's this way in which the UUA has sometimes, in some ways, and I'm not doing this as like a particular dig, but there are just some things about it that sometimes feel more transactional. And I think as we try to shift BLUU, as we try to untrain ourselves out of that model, we're seeing that folks respond differently. It is more engaging. It is more spirit centered, and I think it gives certainly us and other people around us a space for spirit. And I don't have other words for that, but I know that I think, you know, Mykal, I think you used the words of like, we're just trying to hold with a lot of care and intention this thing that we're building, and how do we do that in community, you know, is kind of what we're holding.
So Lena, you mentioned that white Unitarian Universalists have said how meaningful BLUU is to them, and I think for me, and you and I have talked about this privately, so I'll share my side of that conversation publicly. The fact that Black-centered, Black-focused Unitarian Universalism can exist means there's hope for my faith, right? Our Unitarian Universalist faith. Because if it couldn't exist, then it would mean to me that Unitarian Universalism was irredeemably white supremacist, and I couldn't stay in a faith that was irredeemably white supremacist. I can work on a faith that has roots in white supremacy and is willing to change from that. But I can't stay in a faith that can't change from that. So, you know, I want to spend, you know, I hope that we spend most of our time on how life affirming and spirit affirming this work is that you're doing. And I'm wondering, because you describe, Mykal, you described this pastoral care line, and Didi, you described that there are people who, white folks who want to participate in your survey, the assessment. And I know my Unitarian Universalist white people after 20-something years of being a UU. And do you have like a BLUU white nonsense advisory group or something? I just have to wonder about that, because you should not need to be telling white people, no, please don't fill out the survey. Like, you should be able to like send that email off to like the BLUU white nonsense advisory group to deal with that. It breaks my heart that you have to spend time explaining to white people that this exclusively Black survey is not for them. So I just wonder. From the laughter, I'm guessing that doesn't exist. But
That it doesn't. No, we don't have that. We don't. But, you know.
I feel like we have it in my head. Like, I have all the petty responses on reserve, but I just don't do it, you know? So.
You know, it's a really fascinating thing. Like it was a reminder to me about something that you said, Lena, which is, you know, we have to sort of sometimes work our own selves out of what we're used to, and work ourselves out of, like, I have had to work myself out of responding in the ways that I have responded in the past, because, you know, we get taught, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I've been taught my whole life, well, you gotta tread really gently, and you gotta say it this way and not that way, you know, to avoid issue and to avoid problems. And the reality is, like, it's important that we're honest and clear, right? And ultimately, I think that serves everybody well, not just Black UUs, but everybody. It's the inability to be honest and real and clear that has kept us in the places that we've been, right? And so yeah, like I hear you, Didi. Like, sometimes I gotta be like, okay.
What is your personal experience as a Black Unitarian Universalist? Please tell me, white person. I appreciate it.
Here we go. Here we go.
Certainly, by all means, go ahead.
Right. And just this notion that that I have to remind myself, like the fact that I have to remind myself at 40, how old am I? 43 years old, that it's okay that something is just mine, right? Like, that I have to do that, and that I know there are a whole lot of Black people doing that, is a problem. Like, it's really good. It's not only okay, it's good. So,
well, and I think this is a really good illustration of one of the functions of white supremacy, right? Is that the Black and brown folks having to do this extra work of catering to, centering, and thinking about white needs, white feelings, white responses, and white folks having the privilege to just be completely oblivious to the needs of Black and brown folks, and also simultaneously just not to think about them, right? And not just like act on them, right? And so it's just very this work just brings out how clear that is, and how much of it we have in Unitarian Universalism, and how we are trained as Black and brown folks to just cater to that. It's like second nature for me. And I find myself through the transformational work that we've been doing in BLUU, starting to see more and more, I actually maybe don't have to do that. And what happens when we do that? And I think this, just to tie in, this kind of brings back to some of the responses of folks to safety pin box, and of folks to some of the stuff that BLUU does as well, which is, you all, this isn't about white folks at the center, then I have an issue with it, and then I have to tell you all about it, and you have to take the time to listen to me about it. And I also think, there's been an influx of, I think part of my challenge stepping into the role as executive director is it is a beautiful thing that suddenly, now that we are, growing more and more into a formal organization, people want our input on things. They want our insight. What a lot of those folks are missing is that is work. And a lot of people in UUism are asking us to do this work for free, and it's uncompensated work. And I came across this meme on the Facebooks. I don't know who it's from, but they were like, the white people have been mad at Black folks ever since we stopped working for free. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people that are like, oh, but can't you just look at this statement? Can't you just give me your opinion about this? What's the CSAI for General Assembly coming up? Can't you just blah, blah, blah? Like, literally, I spend significant amounts of my time being like, is that actually in service to Black UUs, or is that white folks being like, do this work for me? And it's a fine line, right? Because I value and appreciate that folks want our opinions and respect our insight. What I don't value is that they want to be in accountable relationship with us without building that relationship out, right? Without actually doing the work and time it takes, and frankly, without compensating us for our work, I'm really thinking about, like, maybe I just need to start an arm of BLUU that is like consulting white congregations with all the crap they're asking us to consult them about, and here are our rates, and here's how you can pay Black folks to do that, because it's literally like that big of a deal. And I think Meg, you had something you wanted to share, or a question.
I don't want to interrupt that. I think a consultancy arm like that's brilliant. Put up a little thing, $25 a question. Come and ask yes, no questions.
Yes. Just pick my brain. This is the pick my brain rate. Okay.
Didi, did you want to add something to what Lena was saying?
Yeah, I think that Lena is spot on. Like, before I came on even to the UUA, like being in this position as a collaborative organizer, I know like a lot of white Unitarians were like, tell us what we should do. And a lot of Black Unitarians, like, we need to strategize and organize on just how to like tell y'all to like, and like now we're taking it, right? And so I think that that's super important. I love what Lena said about consulting, because white people often think that our time is not valuable as theirs is, right? And I think that's super problematic. But I also wanted to say that I didn't get a chance to say that I'm a recipient as well of the Black Women Being Fund. And I think that what Leslie and Marissa are doing is huge work. Like, no one has ever done that before. And I don't have to quantify, like, you may know who I am, but I don't have to quantify, right? And so I'm not sure that white people are doing that work. They know that they're responsible in some way, and right? And so I'm in agreement with them. They don't have to care about what white people are doing, right? I just need your money. And I appreciate that Black women gave it to me.
So my question, I did have a question. I was wondering, with the people who showed up for worship and like, Mykal, you said you're 43, 42. In UU land, that's very young. In the rest of the world, it's not. But, I'm middle-aged. I say UU, I'm not old, So what I wonder is, are you mostly drawing younger people, or is there a total age span? Or how are you seeing age fit in with who's coming your way?
Just in terms of worship, I mean, I saw folks of various age groups, which is pretty stunning and spectacular. I'm thinking actually in this moment about the survey. I was looking at the age range. I mean, nearly 100 people have filled out the survey already, and I would say I think it's maybe 22% are folks who are 35 to 44, and about 23% are like 45 to 54, right? But still, I think maybe 10%, maybe a little less than that are younger than 34. So it's a pretty wide age range, and you saw that. We saw that also in the healing space at GA, right? There were children in that space. There were babies in that space. There were elders in that space. There were folks who were my age in that space. So I think something can be said for what it means to create the kind of space where everybody, like really everybody, can show up and see themselves reflected.
That's so great. I wondered. Yeah. Go ahead, Aisha. Sorry.
I just wanted to I want to lift up the UUA's commitment to helping BLUU fundraise and clarify the financial aspects that, interestingly, people have also, white UUs have had different reactions. Some have been super supportive and some have misconstrued. I really feel like at this point when white folks, especially white UUs, are misunderstanding things, I think it's willful. So I'm not, I don't buy into anymore that people are, at this point, it's willful ignorance. But Lena or Mykal or Didi, do you want to talk about, or Lena, I guess, the commitment to the money? I'm going to pet my dog.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So a couple of things, even just the reframing. The UUA funding decision is basically two separate funding decisions. And this actually came from the board. So there is one of a long-term investment of $5 million, right? There's that bucket of money. And then there is independent, above and beyond, separate from that, a commitment to raise, or a commitment to funding our operational costs at about $225,000 each year. The reason they landed on the $225,000 is because that's about the amount that, if that $5 million were in an endowment, that would be the draw off of the endowment, right? So that is how they came to that decision. They also came to the decision because it is sort of a setup for failure for organizations historically to be set up with a one-time investment of money and no operational funds to help support their growth and development and support ongoing programming, while this other long-term investment is sort of getting itself together. So I just want to shout out to the board for having that foresight of saying, we want to set BLUU up for success. We don't want to just give them this one-time infusion that without support and organizational infrastructural support as well to help them really be set up for success. So that's actually some really forward-thinking, sort of a shift away typical nonprofit practices. And it's really been really critical to the work of BLUU, including, our ability to hire Reverend Mykal Slack, our ability to hire Didi and myself to be able to actually really get our hands around this work and be able to do it. I think the important things for folks to know is that additionally to that, they gave themselves or the UUA as an organization up to 5 years to sort of replace that $5 million in the UUA funds. And I say replace because the way that the funding decision is written is that that money is sort of guaranteed to us in a promise that is, completely like solid and has been run past the lawyers, right? Like that money is to go to BLUU. So if at the end, and they've given themselves 5 years to fundraise it. So if at the end of 5 years, they've only raised $3.5 million, BLUU will still receive $5 million, right? So that is the way that funding decision is set up. So I just want to adjust the frame a little bit because it's actually not about the UUA helping us fundraise necessarily. It's actually about us helping the UUA fundraise to help them fulfill their promise. And so, to that end, we have come up with a BLUU Giving Sunday, two BLUU Giving Sundays, and there will be lots more official information coming out from the UUA. I'm in talks and collaborations with Mary Catherine Warren from Stewardship and Development, and her team there, including Cherie Taylor, who's Black UU and has been part of BLUU community since the beginning. And so, those Sundays, there's one coming up in November and then another one in February, where we will, where that money is going towards the UUA's funding commitment of that $5 million. And because of some generous donors, there's actually $1 million match for all of those funds that come through. So it's pretty exciting. It is as far as faith goes, like faith organizations, it's a pretty radical funding decision. And I think that it's in one way it was unfortunate that we had so much other things going on in the spring that the UUA couldn't fully capitalize on the radicalness of this funding decision, and not in like a white savior sort of centering white people sort of way, but in the way, right, that I talked about in our BLUU sit down, couch discussion when we launched that video, which was like, this is actually just a first step in a returning of wealth. When you think about the accumulated wealth of the UUA, of white Americans, and the hoarding of that wealth, which literally came off of the backs of slaves and off of indigenous land, this is really just a drop of a drop of a drop in a bucket, right? And it's meaningful and it's powerful. And so I just think that hopefully that offers some clarity on the funding decision. We are working on just creating more transparency around our funding, in particular for Black UUs, but that information will be accessible to everyone. The basic tenet of everything that we have done with our funding is turn it right around to serve Black UUs. So our first infusion of money, before this big board decision, we used it to get Black UUs to General Assembly. And then, our second infusion of money, really, we used it to do the convening, which was life-changing for people. And I'm not using that language. That is language that Black UUs have told me, that this experience was life-changing for me. And so, we did that. And then this year, once, we got that funding decision, our first things were to hire Mykal and then hire Didi, because at the convening, the two big takeaways we got were that, one, people need spiritual care and pastoral care. They really need that spiritual nourishment and pastoral care. And then second, they really wanted to be more closely connected with the movement for Black lives. This is, this really is this really is just sort of a critical moment in our country and in the world's history around Blackness. And we see now all of the ways in which the movement for Black lives sort of laid the groundwork for all kinds of resistance that are coming up now against Trump and against his policies and the federal things that are coming down. So yeah, it's really been pivotal. So those are kind of some broad strokes of our funding decisions, what we've done with it. And I think that, the other thing is that on all the work that we do, we strive to do it differently, which means it doesn't look like how the UUA does things. So, you know, when we were putting the convening together, you know, we basically really intensively planned that in, let's see, November, December, January, February, basically like 4 months. I mean, it had been, you know, a seed before that, obviously, but then we really dug in, and then we really did it in the last 2 months. And there were folks at the UUA who, you know, eyebrows raised, like, how are you going to pull this off? What are you doing? You know, and, you know, and you're right, and Meg's raising, it wasn't anyone's full-time job at that point either. And yet we did it. And, you know, I was booking folks' ticket, you know, like up to a week before, because that's when they got their work schedule and knew that they could actually make it. And so I think, you know, that looks really different, and it causes some uncomfortability to folks at times. But that's, I feel like, part of what makes the magic of BLUU happen, is like our openness and willingness to be able to do those things. So I could go on and on about that stuff, but I'll stop there, because hopefully that provides a little insight into these funding decisions. Hopefully it didn't create more confusion. And then folks can just be on the lookout for information from the UUA, and we'll be, you know, amplifying all of those communications as well.
So Lena, you know, thank you for bringing up the convening and just how important it was for so many people. I've heard that too. From people, just how important it was. And Mykal, you mentioned the healing space at GA, and just how wonderful it is to see all the faces on Zoom, to be in an exclusively Black worship online. I wonder, is there a dream about convening too, or mini convenings? Because as wonderful as it is to see everyone smiling Black faces on Zoom, I would imagine that being in a room together, like, is the next level of that. And yes, it's not, I mean, there are more resources that have to go into that, but is that, am I like thinking 3 steps ahead of this assessment that's happening now, and you just want to hear from people what they need, or are people actually dreaming about getting folks into rooms together with one another, like actually being in Black UU spaces physically?
This is Mykal. There are a couple of things actually. You're not dreaming. You're not thinking or dreaming 2 or 3 steps ahead. I think it's while it's important for us to, you know, do these assessments and really hear from people and respond to what people are saying. One of the things that has been really clear from the beginning is that folks want to be together in whatever ways we can help make that happen and make that real. So, you know, the BLUU Micro 30 actions that we did before, and, you know, there's going to be a new iteration of that that's coming up, that will involve like creating connections, right? Like really creating space, helping people create space to be together, as Black UUs. Like that's coming up, really soon. We've actually been in some very, very recent conversation about having a revival in the Midwest someplace.
Revival!
Revival! I know.
Tambourine.
Tambourine. Run around the room. But we've been talking about that. It's in the very, very early stages of planning. So, you know, I don't want to say too much about it now, but you know, figuring out ways that we can realistically gather as people is deeply important, because yes, it's great seeing all the faces on Zoom, like all those, you know, seeing all the little boxes was really great, but you know, being able to stand next to somebody and have them grab your hand, right, or put their hand on the small of your back, or give you a hug, or sing alongside you. There's nothing like that. Right? There's nothing like that. And so we're in the process of really trying to create some spaces where folks can do that.
Yes.
Lena, Didi, if you want to say anything more about any of those things or more things.
Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, definitely pointing folks towards the revival, towards, you know, the creating connections, which is coming up, and I'm super excited about that. And then, you know, we do have the BLUU Min meetups, which is also can be found on the link that I shared earlier with the BLUU Min stuff from our website. And to put a fine point on it, no, we aren't doing another convening like that anytime soon. And, you know, part of that has to do with investment. That convening costs just over $200,000 to execute. And, you know, we called it a convening for a reason. It wasn't called a conference, which conferences happen annually. It's fascinating to me how many people just assume like, oh, this convening is going to happen every year, when none of our materials said anything about an annual convening, and we never talked about it like that. So it's just fascinating, the assumptions people bring to the space. But, you know, certainly if there's any, you know, funders out there who really want to, you know, start to build a fund specifically for a, you know, BLUU annual, you know, conference or convening, by all means, send me an email and we'll have talks. And, you know, maybe think about making that happen. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Didi, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm all for it. I was just talking to Miss Vana the other day, and she was saying the same thing Lena said. She was like, "It'd be nice, but I know we can't, you know, we can't do it all off our own dime." And I think she even lifted up that there were some UU camp spaces. I just saw that. She did say, she was like, they should just give it to us. And so I advocate, and I'm uplifting what Lena and Miss Vana are saying. Just give it to us.
Amen. And I think
Yes.
one of the things that I'm seeing, especially, I mean, definitely since the election, but really since Charlottesville, and this is anecdotal, is how tired of spirit the Black folks that I know in this area are, and I could almost, you know, I could see it in their faces. And so BLUU is life-saving in that way too, spirit saving, and not having to take care of. One of my Black women friends said to me, you know, after Charlottesville, I had white people saying to me, "Are you okay?" And she said it was the least helpful thing to say and ask, because this has been going on, and, you know, she just doesn't, that's not helpful, you know. And so being in Black only spaces and not having to take care of white people who have just realized how bad racism is. Anyway, we have 3 more minutes. Final thoughts from our 3 fabulous, amazing folks.
Oh, I didn't realize we only had 3 more minutes. I went so fast. My final thoughts are just to encourage folks to think about this as a beginning journey with BLUU. I think there's a growing sense of like, oh, once we meet this $5 million, once we, you know, give them this money, that's sort of, we've done our work and it's completed now, and we can pat ourselves on the back as good white people and be done. And I just can't push back enough on how many hundreds of years slavery lasted, how many hundreds of years since that, that the hoarding of wealth into white hands and white organizations and white institutions has really decimated Black communities and Black lives. And so to really think of people as who are really committed to our faith together as an invitation to a lifelong journey, a journeying together of reparations, of returning of wealth, of really respecting and honoring Black leadership in a way that has not happened in the past, and just an invitation into that, you know, long-term work.
Didi?
Mykal, and Didi, you want any final thoughts? And then Mykal, TIno, and Meg, if you have any final thoughts after Mykal and Didi.
Go ahead, Didi.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to figure out what it is that we can do. And I like that Lena said that it's long-term work, because it definitely is, not just for white UUs, but it's like, how do we restore ourselves, right? And like make sure that it's a sustainable restoration and not just a temporal one.
I will say that this is heart work. This is spirit work. This is love in action. This is, for me, and I know for a lot of us, what Unitarian Universalism can look like and mean, right? And so I just feel really blessed to be a part of it, and I'm really encouraging Black UUs to join us in all the ways that you can. You know, if you're online folks, you know, check out the closed Facebook group. If you're not online and want to stay connected by email or some other way, don't hesitate to let us know what you need, right? Let us know how you're out there in the world so we can meet you there, right? We need to know where you are in the world so we can meet you there. And so we're not presuming that everybody's on Facebook, right? That everybody's checking their email 20 times a day. Let us know where you are so we can meet you. We want to.
I just want to say thank you. For the last couple of years, BLUU has come monthly to the VUU and generously given time without compensation to share what you're up to. And I know that now your schedules are taking you elsewhere. You know that you're always welcome here. There's always a platform for you here. But you know, I really just want to thank the collective. Some of you are here today, some of you not, who have really just been wonderful guests for the last, you know, every month for the last couple of years. That's a very significant gift of time. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Amen. And thank you for the last 2 years. Thank you for today. And thank you for starting the reformation of Unitarian Universalism. I said it. Next week, we will be with Kimberly Hampton and Jake Lyon-Fields, and we will talk about St. Louis. St. Louis is out of control. So please, the police there. So my parting thought would be, please read up on what's going on in St. Louis from alternative news sources, because it's actually quite scary. So thank you all, peace and love, and we'll see you next week on The VUU.